Hello, I'm Keith Spera from NOLA.com and the Times-Picayune. Welcome to Let's Talk. My guest today is not Santa Claus, but he does jet around the country at Christmas time. He is the musical director for Trans-Siberian Orchestra's heavy metal holiday season fantasia of lasers, lights, pyro, and squall and guitar solos, all of it set to a mystical storyline. The 2025 TSO tour revisits the rock operas The Ghosts of Christmas Eve and Beethoven's Last Night. It stops at the Smoothie King Center in New Orleans on December 17th. Here to talk about all that and more is Al Pitrelli. Al, welcome to Let's Talk, sir.
How are you, my friend? Good to see you.
So is the Santa Claus analogy fitting? Do you feel like Santa around that time of the year, jetting around and spreading joy?
Yeah, without the reindeer. Well, other than that, we're good.
All right, so you're in an airport. Someone asks you what you do. You say you are the music director and guitarist for Trans-Siberian Orchestra, and they say, what is that? What do you say to them?
Well, it's funny that you say that, because like years ago when I first started doing TV and radio press, the interview would say, your English is really good.
Assuming you were Russian or Siberian?
From Siberia. I'm like, well, it's pretty good for being from Brooklyn, but it's funny because there's so many millions and millions of people. Literally, I think we clocked in, we hit almost 21 million tickets at the end of last year who've seen us, yet there's other people who just don't know what it is, or they're kind of put back. Obviously, they've heard the songs, especially Christmas Eve Sarajevo, which is permeated like everywhere, football games, car commercials. It was an episode of The Office that played it, So everybody's kind of, I know that song. All right, I'll take that. You may not know who it is, but if you enjoy the art form that Paul O'Neill created so many decades ago, that's a good start.
Absolutely, yeah, and obviously Wizards and Winners been in a bunch of car commercials and stuff and all over the place as well. So, I mean, there are a couple of songs that have permeated the consciousness, for sure. But
and it would be one as well.
Well, yeah, but the thing that always intrigues me about it is if you go to a TSO show, I mean, it is, as I said in the intro, a lot. I mean, it's sensory overload. There's more, lasers and pyro and explosions. I mean, it'd make the guys in Iron Maiden blush. So a lot of the people that come to that show, your show, wouldn't be caught dead at an Iron Maiden or a Judas Priest show, but yet they come out to see you guys do it. And why do you think that is? Why do you think you guys have been able to attract such a wider audience to what is really a hard rock show with all the bells and whistles?
I think it's a couple things, and I appreciate you saying it in the way that you did. Let's rewind to the first show we ever did in 1999. Okay, Tower Theater, Philadelphia, and we heard it was sold out. Mm-hmm. We never played a show in our lives. You see over my show, we sold a lot of records between 96 and 99 before we ever toured, and I felt like I was in the Steely Dan of Christmas. No touring, no shows, nothing. And so when we found out it sold out, dude, we were stoked. Whatever the cap on the tower was, 2,500, 3,000, fantastic. House lights go down, curtain comes up. I look at the audience, and I don't know if we chatted about this the last time we spoke, but I almost had a heart attack because right in front of me was a pair of grandparents, this couple wearing those crocheted sweaters with reindeer on them. And next to them was seated a young man wearing a Slayer hoodie.
Well, a reindeer sweater and a Slayer hoodie side by side.
Front row.
Front row.
So that, from the jump, became our demographic. There is no demographic. I look in the audience and I see, grandpa's holding up their grandchild, like Rafiki from The Lion King, like 1 year old with the feet going like this here. 3 generations deep. People who love classical music, sometimes we put them back on their heels. They're expecting this Tchaikovsky performance, and all of a sudden there's pyro being choreographed to Beethoven's Fifth Symphony, so they're a little put off. Yet I think we do it in a very classy manner, very well represented musically. The players that we have are fantastic, so it's like spot on. The folks, the headbangers, kind of know what they're getting into, but then they're being exposed to the great classics. And everybody's there just to kind of enjoy this 2 hours and 15 minutes or so of music and production, like you had said. But I think what kept it alive and growing over 3 decades is the absolute ability of Paul O'Neill to tell a story that everybody in the audience relates to. you know? And I'm a huge Leonard Bernstein fan ever since On the Waterfront, West Side Story, and those soundtracks that he wrote. But I watched an interview with him. He was discussing Beethoven. He said something to the effect of, part of Beethoven's genius was his art was accessible but never ordinary.
That's a good way to put it. It's accessible. It's something people can relate to. It's not over their heads, but it also has its own sort of sophistication. But it has to be sophisticated in order to be interesting and unique. So, you've got to walk that line.
Just the motif from Beethoven's Fifth, I mean, ba 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 ba, repeats for the entirety of that piece of music in different manners, in different mathematical equations and relationships, So it's fascinatingly deep and brilliant. But I could sing That's You, I could sing the theme from the Ninth Symphony, I get it, So with Paul O'Neill, he wrote a story, or several stories, and this year we're talking about The Ghost of Christmas Eve, that everybody in the audience goes, wait a minute, man, I just lived that, or I missed somebody, or I haven't spoken to somebody in a long time, or we have an empty chair at our dining room table, which seems to be magnified around the holidays, You miss somebody, I think the saddest part of that is you feel alone in that sentiment. And then when you realize the other 12,000 people in the building may be sharing that feeling, it doesn't, take away maybe your pain or that emptiness, but you know that, okay, well, I'm not alone, And I think that that's the third element that outsiders will overlook about what TSO is. Yeah, it's bombastic production-wise. It's crazy. Dude, we rolled out of town last year with 21 tractor trailers and 12 buses. This is awesome.
So 21 tractor trailer trucks of gear and 12 buses with band and crew.
And the crew, yeah. A lot of stuff going on. But the subtler thing is the story and the message and in all Paul O'Neill's work, God bless him, everything had a happy ending, And so you walk out of there with a sense of hope or a sense of, okay, I'm okay now, or I feel better than I did when I walked into the building.
Well, and that's the thing, you're right. I mean, the stories that he created touched on notes that everybody can relate to. I mean, I said there are kind of mystical elements to it, but it's also, the story of a runaway who's alone on Christmas Eve, or, those sorts of things, which are very identifiable emotions.
Sure, and listen, starting with me, I mean, I recorded this stuff, 30-something years ago. I was in my early 30s and I'm 63 now. So my perspective to the lyric and the poetry and the characters has changed over the years. So I'm recording the first album, and the dad's pleading to the heavens about he wants his baby girl who ran away from home to come back. I don't care what we fought about, just on Christmas Eve, please God, bring her home to be safe. I have two of my older children in the military. There's nights where I played that song Ornament live, and also that I've become the parent who my boys are deployed on opposite ends of the world. They're men, I'm proud of them, fantastic. I mean, all my children, I miss them and I love very much, but God, get them home safe. They're still my baby boys, I mean, I've been living this thing since it opened its eyes in 1995, 96, and it hits me every time. It's not, not going through the motions. This is as important to me now as it was 30-something years ago.
Right.
And I think the folks in the audience, I think, get that. Not to cut you off, I'm sorry.
No, but I say that's important for you as a musician to connect with the storyline as well. I mean, that plays a big role in you being able to deliver an effective performance if you're feeling it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely. If you're just tuning in, my guest today is Trans-Siberian Orchestra music director Al Pitrelli. Let's talk a little bit about your background. I mean, you went to Berklee College of Music for a bit, and then 2 years?
2 semesters.
Two semesters. You left to go play music, right? I mean, you decided you wanted to go out and do it?
I had a very important person in my life years and years ago, a guitar player named Steve Vai.
Steve Vai.
Steve and I grew up in a town called Hicksville. He grew up in Carl Place, one town away from each other. Steve went to Berklee. I replaced him in his local bar band. I answered an audition thing in the local newspaper, whatever. He'd come home from break at school. I met him, wonderful human being. Would kind of, say, work on your reading, work on your rhythm parts, and you should think about going to Berklee. He goes, I think he just got started working with Zappa at the time, maybe, or just before that, whatever it was. So when somebody talks to you, you listen real close. I mean, incredible level of virtuosity on his instrument, but his intellect, and just a fantastic Italian kid from Long Island who had the wherewithal to just kind of take time out to talk to me and help me over the years in many, many ways. And so me being me, I'm like, okay. And I signed up and I went to Berkeley. And I met some of the most incredible players from around the world, people I never would have met in my life, styles of music that I probably wouldn't have been exposed to at that point. Some great friends to this day. And by the second semester, I felt like, all right, I got to go back to New York. I was getting a little itchy. I wanted to kind of dig in and go for it. So I left. After like 2 semesters of just a great education and great experiences, took that knowledge, took a minute to kind of organize it into cohesive musical thoughts, albeit on the guitar, the piano, or whatever, and hit the streets of New York and say, I'm going to do this the old-fashioned way, which is not too long after when I met Paul O'Neill in 1985, kicking around the clubs and the whole scene in New York City, and we became friends. He goes, one of these days we're going to work together. 10 years later, that became true.
Well, in that interim 10-year period, is that when you went out with Alice Cooper? You were touring with Alice as his music director for a while, yeah?
Yeah. Again, thank you, Steve Ott. You know, like Steve had just joined Whitesnake, and he was out somewhere and ran into Alice, and Alice says, I'm looking for a guitar player, but he needs to be an MD. He goes, would you do the job? And Steve says, I'm already committed. He had just left Roth and was with Coverdale now. He goes, but, you know, there's this kid on Long Island who I highly recommend, and you know, talk about an endorsement, you know. Yeah. And anytime I see Steve, anytime we correspond, I always say, listen, man, you know, again, it's 40 years later, thank you from the bottom of my heart. And he's just such a sweet, love him to death, and so proud of what he's still accomplishing and breaking new ground with the guitar. But yeah, I was Alice's MD. I started doing a lot of sessions in New York City, a lot of different artists. Everybody from, you know, Michael Bolton to Celine Dion to Taylor Dane with Dee Snider, the band Asia, all over the place. Because I wasn't necessarily trying to get painted into any particular corner of style of guitar player. I just wanted to be a really good musician, and I wanted to be, and I want to still to this day be a good student of music. Constantly learning, constantly reading, constantly exploring. So unbeknownst to me, that whole era of my life from about 85 to Paul's phone call in 95 was musically and socially getting me prepared to what was to become the Trans-Siberian Orchestra. Working with female artists, working with male artists, working with a band like Asia, very orchestral, working with Alice, very, you know, like a theatrical presentation on an arena stage, dude. Like when he put the straitjacket on, he wasn't singing Dwight Fry, he became Dwight Fry. Yeah, and I remember looking down, and you know, you got like, you know, I don't know, 100 people spitting on him in the front row of Wembley, and he's like covered in loogies, and he ain't breaking character. And I'm like, this is awesome. So here you go. Paul introduces me, you know, to this art form he wants to create, and there's characters in the story, and there's women in the story, there's men in the story, there's orchestral pieces in the story. And, you know, there's a lot of sight reading involved. We're doing Mozart pieces and Beethoven pieces. You know, I got one of my scores floating around here somewhere, a Shostakovich piece I keep trying to like take apart and figure out how to work that into the TSO show this year, you know. So he knew I could read real well. And he goes, you want to like just do this forever with me? And I'm like, okay. You know, who would have thought it was going to, you know, I knew we were on to something good. I mean, you know, I hit that opening ostinato in Christmas Eve, Sarajevo, 12/24, you know, and I said, this is like one of the darkest, most dramatic, incredibly powerful pieces of music I've ever not only played on, but heard. And he goes, look, man, I don't care about commerce. I don't care if it's a commercial success. I just want to make great art. Count me in. No, and here we are. So
Paul his vision was fully formed when he first brought you on board. I mean, he had written a lot of that music, and he knew what he wanted Trans-Siberian Orchestra to be. Yes, comma,
side note. The song Christmas Eve, Sarajevo, 12/24 appeared on a record by the band Savatage.
Right.
Okay, so I started recording that in February of 95. Okay. So sitting down, him knowing what I was doing, a lot of sessions, a lot of different textural works, a lot of the film score stuff. He knew I was a huge Bernstein fan, Andrew Lloyd Webber, Rodgers and Hammerstein. Like, I love serving the song. I love coming up with parts that are basically underscoring this visual he's trying to create. And that song became the #1 requested song in America that winter, I guess November, December of 95. and lit up the radio. It was amazing. And he said, now I'm going to write a whole record around that. Count me in. Count me in. And he had the story, Christmas Eve and Other Stories. Beautiful poetry, beautiful lyrics. Paul, myself, John Oliva, a gentleman named Bob Kinkle, we would all get together at Paul's apartment in the city. So literally sitting around the kitchen table. I'd have an acoustic guitar on my lap, a piano in front of me. We all did. And he's like, okay, here's the idea. Who's got a riff? Bob would come up with something. Oliva would come up with something. I'd throw something in. And he goes, no, I like that. Let's put it. He saw the whole thing in his head. We had no idea.
Wow.
And he had the old-fashioned cassette recorder,
Right.
So, yes, yeah, he had to put the Scotch tape of the Band-Aid over the thing, the safety, just so he could record on it. Real high-tech was going on. But we would do that for 2-3 months. Still not really knowing what the big picture was yet, but he had it. He knew exactly what he wanted. One of the most incredibly enjoyable, terrifying, electrifying moments in my life, because it's just like, you're watching something be born and you're really not sure what's going on. And bang.
Bang is right. If you're just tuning in, my guest today is Trans-Siberian Orchestra musical director Al Pitrelli. Yeah, it was. And a lot of people may not realize that TSO essentially grew out of that band Savatage, which Paul was working with and you were in, some of the other guys were in. So that was the genesis of it. It just became much bigger than, Savatage had a level of success, obviously, but TSO has taken it to a whole other level. Like you said in the intro, you all have sold 21 million concert tickets over the last 25 years. You tour now with 2 companies are playing simultaneously, because you have a very short touring season. You only want to do this show during the winter, I guess, basically. So you've got 2 companies out doing the show at the same time. And yeah, it's a franchise now. It's a thing.
Well, yeah, it is, because everything we did was unprecedented. We recorded, You'll Go Over My Shoulder, recorded a bunch of records, sold millions and millions and millions of copies before ever playing a note live. Okay. Then there was a DJ, Bill Lewis, up at NCX in Cleveland, who dared Paul to come to Cleveland and do a show. And one thing you don't do is dare Paul O'Neill to do anything, because he will figure out a way to do it. So he said, hey, we're going to go tour. I'm like, huh? With who?
Right.
Who's in the? We need strings. We need singers. He goes, we'll figure it out. Okay. And we did the tour. Fantastic. 7 cities, crushed it, sold out. This is amazing. Then promoters in 2000 across the country wanted a show. And Paul's like, I can't get a band from Boston to Seattle to New Orleans to Tampa to Chicago. It's not going to happen. So he said he's going to keep a band up in the 13 colonies. And he told me, you do the rest of the country. And I'm like, okay. So you start calling up, hey, you still playing bass? Good, get over my house. Let's see if this works out. Or my friend the drummer, or this singer or that singer, and I had a buddy who played violin, and it just, okay, so we figured out how to chop it into 2 while keeping the integrity, So I don't want 2 different versions of this thing, that's not going to happen. This is going to represent the record. We're serving the song, we're serving the story. And then, 3-4 years later, he called me up and he goes, hey, you're sold out in Salt Lake City. I'm like, oh, dude, cool. He goes, yeah, we want to do a second show. And I'm like, when? He goes, 3 in the afternoon.
a matinee performance.
A rock show at 3 in the afternoon? Okay, because it's never been done before. So let's do it. And that's where you look at it as, 110 shows in 60 cities in 5.5 weeks.
Right, you're doing 2 shows in a lot of markets. Not the New Orleans market, but a lot of the other markets. Yeah, you do an afternoon show and a night show, which is, like you said, unprecedented.
And if you like to grow up, like watching one of your babies or your children grow up, how did you become so amazing? Well, as a toddler, loved, looked after, nourished, fed, taken care of. This thing has grown up over the years and continues to grow. I have a group of people in the audience I affectionately refer to as the repeat offenders. They come back year after year. They can't get enough of this thing, which love that, love them. And then the new people, they'll either hear about it or they're not sure, or somebody will talk to them about it, and then they're coming out, I got 3 generations deep families,
And it continues, even though Paul passed away in 2017. He was the guiding force, the genius behind the whole thing. He passes in 2017. Was there ever a question about it continuing on?
Certainly your immediate thought was, Oh my gosh, I didn't really think about the band. I was just like, I just lost my best friend. His wife lost her husband, his daughter lost her dad. So I had Paul and I, he called me the 11th O'Neill. He comes from one of 10 siblings, or he's one of 10 siblings. His family referred to me as the 11th O'Neill. So we were pretty tight for a good half of my life. And that, that's the hole in my heart that will never go away. Then it was time to start thinking about what's going to go on. And thank goodness for his family, his wife and daughter, just say, no, we're going to continue on in Daddy's legacy or my husband's legacy. And Paul used to tell me years ago, he goes, Al, I want this thing to live long past all of us. He wanted to create an art form that's just going to kind of like right off into the sunset. When we leave this earth, let the art form stay behind. And people will still love it. For generations to come, he was hoping. I wasn't expecting that event to take place so early. I guess you're never ready for that, But every pyro hit that goes off, everything in my house is a reminder of Paul and this idea that he had. We just built an empire out of nothing because of his vision and his dedication to doing something special. So the short answer would have been, no, we didn't think about quitting. The long answer was that. We don't know what that word means because we were taught and tutored by Paul for decades that the story and the show will continue no matter what.
Well, and in the last 5 minutes we have left here, I mean, were there unfinished concepts that he had been working on, that he was writing, that could lead to future TSO albums? I mean, is there still material that's out there for new projects that he started?
So much. Yeah. So much. I mean, like works that are completely written, partially recorded, I'd say like 3 rock operas, dozens and dozens of unfinished demos of songs, concepts, ideas, thoughts, notebooks, cassettes, Like, how are we going to play what's on this? Somebody go to Walmart. There's got to be one cassette player left somewhere. That was a punch in the stomach I don't think we've ever recovered from, losing him. The task at hand became, okay, keep the winter tour going. Last year, Sabotage had the great opportunity to start touring again in the spring and summer in South America and Europe. One day we'll sit down and scratch our heads and figure out how to get some new material or some of Paul and John Oliva's or just Paul stuff out again. Not sure when, but I know everybody would love to see that happen. But mind you, he was the one with the vision who had the final say in the studio. He was a producer, he was the writer, he was everything. You don't have that guy in your life. I do not possess that ability that he had. I don't know what the exact, when to hit the stop button when that moment occurs. Paul did. I don't know who's going to step up and fill those shoes. Maybe collectively as a family we'll do it. His family, his wife, his daughter, maybe. I don't have that answer. But yes, there is so much material floating around that I go, God. I have, demos of him talking me through the songs, that I keep on my phone and so on. I just listen to him going, hey guy, listen, I need it to go like this. No. And I just listen to it and go, God, I miss you, brother.
I heard a great story about Paul. Actually told me my dentist, who apparently did some dental work on Paul one time when he was in New Orleans, he apparently carried a briefcase of old silver dollars from different years, and he gave her a silver dollar from like the 1800s that somehow related to her birth year as a thank you. That was one of his things, apparently.
Listen, I have a collection of silver dollars from 1862, 100 years before the year I was born, But he would do things like that just because the memento, the thought of somebody taking the time out to gift you something that had meaning behind it. He wasn't just reaching in his pocket and say, here's $100, dude, thanks. Right. He wanted minutes to come, what year were you born? And he'd look through like these rolls and rolls of silver dollars from the 19th century and find the 100-year anniversary of your birth. I mean, and that's one of thousands of things that he would do during the time that I was with him, that he wanted to change lives. He wanted to put a smile on people's faces. His thing is, if I can make their day better, maybe they got a chance at a better tomorrow. Hence the whole thing with, $1 from every ticket. that Paul ever sold or TSO ever sold. You know, dollar. What's a dollar, dude? I mean, I can't buy one egg with $1 today. You know, but 20 million tickets later at $1 a shot. You know, he didn't talk about changing the world. He did change the world. You know, and I'm proud of him, and I'm proud to be help keeping his legacy alive.
No, it's an incredible legacy that's continuing. So I guess the bottom line is, you know what you're going to be doing every winter for the foreseeable future, for the next decade or so at least. You're going to be on the road with TSO.
I hope. You know, it's like the football team that wins the Super Bowl. Fantastic. How do you get that ring? You get that trophy. You know, you're the champions. You won that. God Almighty. You guaranteed to win it again next year? No. So we're going to take 2 weeks off after New Year's, like we do for the past however many decades, and scratch our heads and say, all right, tear it apart. Let's rebuild it bigger and better if we can. You know, but we guaranteed to go out and crush it? No, but we're going to work really hard to do so. And so far we got a pretty good track record of accomplishing that task, but I never assume anything. You know, I get home, I put my guitar down, you know, I kiss my children, my wife, you know, my older boys, you know, visit with them, hang out for a minute, then it's like, all right, Daddy's getting back to it.
Get back to it. That's how you do it. Well, Al, this has been a lot of fun. I appreciate your insights into all that goes in with the Trans-Siberian Orchestra.
I've enjoyed our conversation, my friend. Thank you so much for everything.
You bet.
Now, are you coming to the show in New Orleans?
I plan on it. I'm going to, you know, brace myself and be there. So,
because this is the first year since COVID that we can actually have our meet and greets and our autograph line. Well, that's, I'd love to say hello in person. And I got 2 days off there before the show, so I'm getting some barbecued oysters. Woo.
There you go. You and every other musician that comes through town, it's a favorite. Very good. Once again, folks, that was Al Pitrelli, the music director of Trans-Siberian Orchestra. I am Keith Spera. I'll see you next time on Let's Talk.